to succeed.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, I understand you're saying some of the voice of it. Could somebody actually, from your agency, dig into that really deep? Because it seems to me like there's got to be some kind of a way to be able to modify that. In particular, you know, even with wetland, you know, if you dig them up, you can build another one. If you build a little bit bigger, there's a lot of things we can do here on this DPS if we had just a tiny little bit of flexibility. Because essentially, with Wyoming, all you need is Yellowstone Park. That's the wolf factor. That's in it in a nutshell. So, if there was a way to have any flexibility with the DPS, I think this issue could be resolved.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if you'll allow, I'll follow up with this commission and in particular Commissioner Wheeler to make sure that I've articulated the question correctly and we get you this response that you want.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Robin, because that issue came up before, and we would like some clarification if possible. Other questions for Robin? I have a couple more. I think I'd like to direct this to Steve. If I could.
Sure. Once again, this is Stephen Doherty. Stephen is appointed by Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar to be his advisor for the Pacific Northwest. He lives and works in Montana.
Steve, thanks for entering the program.
Thank you.
But one of the questions, Steve, that we have is that given the Fish and Wildlife statement about it being a good rule of what we've done, would the Secretary support an appeal at this point?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, if I could, I hearken back to my days as Chairman of the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Commission and discussing the 300 feet setback for traps at trailheads. And I can honestly tell you, we had the same struggles. As far as the appeal, I'm going to punt to the same answer that Robin gave you, that they are considering the appeal. I'm learning that the Department of Justice has a significant voice in whether to appeal or not, and the best I can tell you is it's getting a good hard look right now.
That's a good answer. A little dodge, but that's, thank you, honest. Thanks, Steve. And a second question is to ask if the Secretary would consider regulated hunting as part of the, and it's in there, the quote, extraordinary case where population pressure has given our ecosystem or zone a situation that cannot be otherwise relieved.
Cannot be otherwise relieved. And I made a quick call back to Washington and tried to find somebody who could enlighten me on that particular section. And apparently there has been a case in Minnesota about 20 years ago in which Minnesota attempted to have trapping regulations, and that was challenged for wolves. That was challenged, and the 8th Circuit ruled against the Fish and Wildlife Service on the basis of their initial findings that this was an extraordinary circumstance that could not otherwise be controlled as far as sport hunting. So that's looming out there. But I will also tell you that the Secretary has made it clear, and the Fish and Wildlife Service made it clear that every potential path to getting back to state management, which includes sport hunting, is going to get a good hard look. And as far as Robin's answers about the advocacy of the Fish and Wildlife Service, I would echo as well.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions for Steve and or Secretary of the Interior?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment along those same lines is obviously we want to use sport hunting and trapping as much as possible. It does two things. First off, the folks that are paying for the prey source are getting something back. Secondarily, it reduces what we have to pay somebody in turn to go manage. Wild horses is a good example. I mean, my goodness sakes, we don't want to get in that same predicament with wolves. and have half the budget going just to maintain it someplace. So this last season did a very good job and helped reduce depredation and helped reduce the amount that wildlife services had to go in on control actions. And so anything that we can do along those lines, it isn't a panacea, but it is part of the toolbox using sportsmen along with other control actions.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, the North American Fish and Wildlife Model has worked and brought wildlife populations throughout the West back to the robust levels that they are. And I think there are a lot of people who believe in that, who work for the Fish and Wildlife Service and work for the Secretary of the Interior. And that works because sportsmen and sportswomen have not only talked the talk, they've walked the walk and they've paid for it. So getting people to be wolf advocates means getting sportsmen with the ability to hunt wolves and take care of the depredations and take care of the, not only the livestock depredations, but the other depredations as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Steve? If not, Steve, thanks so much. And before we conclude this segment, Robin, I have this book that Cal and I would like to present to you.
It's probably a how-to
I guess the title of the book is self-explanatory, but thank you again.
The title is Managing American Wildlife. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, may I just add a word at the end?
Please.
At the beginning, I paid my respects to you as a commission, particularly as volunteers. It's one of the great things about our nation, isn't it? That people step up to volunteer to address the people and the natural resources of your remarkable state. And then I again want to pass on my compliments to the Idaho Department of Fish and Game professionals. They really are that professional. And then it's not just words. I am a bureaucrat, so if I sound bureaucratic, there's a reason. But we mean it. We are in this with you to get back to a delisting. You earned it. We're sorry that the rule failed. We're going to look at all paths forward for the interim. Some will be walkable. Some, we and our attorneys might say, are not walkable. But we will find a path because you have recovered wolves. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Steve. To Dan, was there anything that Idaho could have done, either on a legislative basis, by the governor, by the commission, by the directors, in the past, that would have prevented wolf introduction in Idaho? And we also, and he answered that question and said there was not anything that Idaho could have done. And we also suggested that perhaps a paper could be drawn up, a white paper, if you will, to that effect, and as well that Fish and Wildlife Service or representatives of that service be willing to maybe come to our commission meeting on at least an annual basis and maybe even more often. And I didn't realize that we'd act on that as quickly as we did, Robin, and we really do appreciate your being willing to come into the fire here and address our commission about some of these issues. So please. And I